Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a regular meeting of Malahide Council on June 20th. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:31. We'll begin on the agenda with disclosure of pecuniary interest. Deputy Mayor Widner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have one item D, the Hewer Drain meeting to consider.
Thank you. So noted. No one else. So we'll move to approval of previous minutes. So we're looking at the minutes from our regular meeting from June 6th. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, may I have the motion, please?
That the minutes of the regular council meeting held on June 6, 2024 be adopted as printed and circulated.
Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Lewis moved, Councillor Cerna seconds. All in favor? That's carried. So next we'll move into the meeting to consider the Hewer Drain. We have Mr. Verikan. We'll turn it over to you for your presentation, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So tonight we have, I believe, potentially the first minor improvement of the municipality. So there is a new section under the Drainage Act that was introduced in 2020. I'm not sure when it was ascended, but it was introduced in 2020, and it was to allow for small projects such as relocations or culverts to have an expedited process to assist with things like constructing farm buildings, getting a new crossing across the channel. So this is a project under Section 78.5 that limits the ability of what we can do with it. It doesn't allow us to do a lot of things we can do with a typical major improvement, but it was suitable for the project in question. So we had a farm here just southeast of the corner of Whitaker and Lyons, and they had an existing cinch tile, and they wanted to expand their farm operation there. So they wanted to construct new farm buildings where the existing drain was. So they want to relocate the existing tile to the property line to facilitate their construction of their future buildings. As far as meeting the requirements, being on one property, not affecting the capacity of the system, and a few other minor things, this project was eligible for the minor improvement. So we've prepared a minor improvement report here. The estimated cost of construction, it's $20,500, including net HST, and includes reconstruction or realignment of 124 meters of 6-inch pipe. It's going to be relocated to their property line, as I stated earlier. And if there's any questions, I would welcome them through you now. I will note before that because this is a minor improvement, we do not have a quarter revision. So the project either proceeds in full, gets directed back to me to make changes, or is canceled if that is the wish of the landowner or council.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that. So it's not a public meeting. So we're going directly to council members to see if you have any questions, anything that needs clarified. And so the motion would be to adopt the recommended project. Questions, comments? So it's a minor improvement, so pretty straightforward project. So we'll proceed with the motion, please.
That the engineer's report for the Hewer Drain Municipal Drain be accepted, and that bylaw number 2433, being a bylaw to provide for the Hewer Municipal Drainage Works, be read a first and second time and provisionally adopted.
Mover and seconder. Councillor Wilson moves, Councillor Leach seconds. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. We're just double checking the technical potential issues with the sound, just to make sure everything's working okay. Is it working?
Couldn't hear you.
Okay.
Cost of construction.
Okay. Okay. It appears to be working. So we'll proceed with the agenda. The next section is reports of departments. The first report this evening from our Director of Public Works. We're looking at the renewing the contract with the agreement for the SCADA system. Mr. Gobby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to council. Report PW 2427 is entitled Malahide Water and Wastewater Systems APAM SCADA Wide Network Agreement. The gist of this report is that we currently are under contract with Execulink to provide various services for our SCADA network, which basically is the backbone, communication backbone of our water and wastewater systems, as well as for the two water boards that Malahide is the administrator of. So what we're looking for at this point is to execute another 3-year term with Execulink. Essentially, staff have been very pleased with the continual improvement that we've had over the years and with the service provided by Execulink in keeping our SCADA systems up and running. The joint board of management for the Elmer secondary water supply system, as well as the Port Burwell area secondary water supply system, have both already agreed to the extension. So this tonight is looking to get Malahide on board in order to have all parties agree that we are all going to collectively continue to use Execulink for this service for another 3-year term. Other than that, if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you for this overview. Any questions or comments? Councillor Leach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So does Execulink use a hardwired system, or are they a wireless-based system?
Through the chair to Councillor Leach, it's significantly more complicated than a simple answer for that. Essentially, our SCADA network utilizes a number of different connections. We have hard lines, we have wireless connections, we have internet provided by whatever service may be in the local area, and Execulink is essentially kind of helping us tie all of these connections together, as well as providing some router management and other hardware that kind of communicates back to the backbone, which is at our office in Elmer. So it's not really that it's not like we're just signing up for them, like say for Bell services or something like that, and they give us this package deal. You know, there's a number of different fingers in this pie all kind of sticking there. They're just one of the many parties that we deal with. And the service they provide is about, I think it was about $8,000 a year across all of our systems. And they really are the ones that help kind of stitch it all together.
Follow up?
Yes, please. What happens when those systems that we rely on that are not in the SCADA system, but those external ones, what happens when they go down?
Through the chair to Councillor Leach, like, you give me a little example of what you mean by that?
A hardwired system obviously is fairly power outage proof, but what happens when a wireless provider goes off grid?
So through the chair to Councillor Leach, essentially these things do happen. We do have backup power wherever available. So there will be a certain amount of communication that can still occur. What does happen is that when those instances happen, the SCADA system is set up to immediately alarm our operators, who are then dispatched to site, so that in the case of say a rechlorination station, an operator would be dispatched to make sure that the systems are continuing to operate and provide the safe drinking water that they're supposed to, despite the fact that we've lost this telecommunications link. So really, the biggest advantage of SCADA systems is it provides ongoing monitoring, recording of all the data that is going through there. And it does provide that notification to the operators of any kind of irregularity so that they can respond to the sites and make any kind of changes or actions that might be required.
Thank you.
Yeah, good questions. Good to know that there's backups in place. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, can I have the motion, please?
The report number PW 2427 entitled Malahide Water and Wastewater Systems APAM SCADA-wide network agreement be received, and that the mayor and CIO and or clerk be authorized and directed to renew the existing APAM SCADA-wide area network agreement for a term of 3 years and to execute the necessary documents with Execulink, subject to the acceptance by the Joint Board of Management for the Elmer and Port Burwell area secondary water supply systems for their portion.
Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Serna moves, Councillor Glinsky second. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Mr. Godby. We'll move to the next department. So from the planning department, we have Mr. Steele with us. Good evening. I think you have 3 severance applications for us this evening. So over to you.
Thank you. Before council tonight is consent application D10 E48-24. This is a application submitted by Bill and Anne Marie Reimer for a proposed surplus farm dwelling severance. Proposed severed parcel will be approximately 0.7 hectares in size, with approximately 95 meters of frontage along John Wise Line. The PPS, county and local official plans all contain criteria for surplus farm dwelling severances, and staff have reviewed the application and find that the application does meet all these applicable criteria. And so staff would recommend that the application be supported and subject to the recommended conditions being forwarded to the Land Division Committee for its consideration. And I'm happy to take any questions from members of council at this time.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll proceed with the motion, please.
That report number DS 2431 entitled Application for Consent to Sever number D10 E4824 of Bill and Anne Marie Reimer, authorized agent, Civic Planning Solutions, Inc., David Rowe be received, and that the application for consent to sever D10 4824 of Bill and Anne Marie Reimer relating to the property located at Concession 4, North Part Lots 11 and 12, Township of Malahide, 49579 John Wise Line be supported for the reasons set out in this report, and that this report and the recommended conditions be forwarded to the Land Division Committee for its review and consideration.
Mover and seconder. Councillor Serna moves, Councillor Glinsky seconds. All in favor? That's carried. And the next application, Mr. Steele, please.
These next applications, D10-E49 and E51-24, also Bill and Anne Marie Reimer, for several properties along John Wise Line. The consent applications, or the 2 applications, are to facilitate a land swap between a previously severed surplus farm dwelling as well as a vacant farm parcel, approximately 0.3 hectares. So it would be almost a 1-for-1 swap with no land being removed from agricultural production. The purpose being so that a barn structure with solar panels located on the roof would be on the same parcel as the severed dwelling for the purposes of aligning the ownership and contracts associated with those solar panels. The provincial policy statement, county official plan, and local official plan all contain criteria for what are called minor boundary adjustments, which permits them in agricultural areas, provided that there's no creation of any new lots and that the adjustment is minor in nature. Given that the size of the proposed swap, as well as that there is no change in the ultimate size of the parcels, staff have no concerns with the application and are recommending that the application be supported, subject to the conditions recommended to Land Division Committee for its consideration. And that concludes my presentation. I have questions from members of council.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council? Councillor Wilson?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm not against this or the last one, but does anyone go back and check when that obvious lot there in the future will be severed into a building lot? does anyone go back and say, hey, there's already an agreement that this isn't allowed to happen? Because I happen to know the former owners of that, the previous thing we just talked about, and there were all sorts of things split off of there and wasn't supposed to happen again, but it did. I'm just wondering, does anyone go back and check on any of these agreements at later dates, or is it just, oh, here's this before us now, go for it?
Mr. Steele, do you wish to comment on that question?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, just to seek clarification, is the question regarding like other servants or like historical servances, and confirming that like those conditions have been met and that what is being proposed is indeed being registered. Just seeking some clarification on what the councillor is referring to in terms of checking on land servances.
So right now we're going to allow this to happen with the condition that that lot can't be severed in the future. Does that get checked on? Because there's all sorts of farms that have the house removed from it and some buildings, and then they build something else, and then that gets removed, and then, but it's only supposed to happen once. So I'm just wondering, I'm hoping that things are checked on in the future when this guy goes to say, not necessarily this person, but in the future, if they want to get that lot severed and taken out, I mean, it would be a perfect lot size. So I'm just asking if that is checked on before, I'm assuming it is, but it's just a future problem.
So it sounds like a question about, whether systematically the conditions are upheld and if verified. So please, Mr. Steele.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. So in this case, it is a lot addition for a 1-for-1 land swap. So there is no new parcel created in this instance. In general, in cases of, considering either future servances or previous servances, after or if approved and conditions are attached, there is a process where the owners do have to go through the process, and those conditions are verified by staff to ensure they are met prior to a consent being what's called certified. Essentially, it's stamped by the County of Elgin and then taken to the land registry shop for certification and registration and sort of those legal items. Additionally, I note that the Vegan Farm parcel is currently zoned A2, which does prohibit a dwelling, and also the policies of the PPS and county official plan and local official plans do prohibit the creation of new residential lots. And so those would all be reviewed and addressed either through the consent process, or if in the future any kind of development proposal came forward, staff would ensure that those proposals are reviewed against the applicable policies.
Thank you for that. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, may I have the motion, please?
The report number DS 2432 entitled Application for Consent to Sever D10E49 and D10E5124 of Bill and Anne Marie Reimer, Authorized Agent, Civic Planning Solutions, Inc., Co. David Rowe, relating to the properties located at Concession 5, Part Lot 13, RP 11R 9058, Part 1, and Concession 5, South Part Lot 13, Township of Malahide, 49718 and 49780 John Wise Line be received, and that the application for consent to sever number D10E4924 and D10E5124 of Bill and Anne Marie Reimer, relating to the properties located at Concession 5, Part Lot 13, RP 11R 9058, Part 1, and Concession 5, South Part Lot 13, Township of Malahide, 49718 and 49780 John Wise Line be supported for the reasons set out in this report, and that this report and the recommended conditions be forwarded to the Land Division Committee for its review and consideration.
Thank you. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Wilson moves. Councillor Lewis seconds. All in favor? That's carried. And so the final report, Mr. Steele, related to this property. Please go ahead with the overview.
So these are two consent applications, D10-E42 and E43-24 of Maitland Williams and Aidan Wilkins. for 53358 and 53408 John Wise Line. Similarly, these two applications are to facilitate another land swap between two parcels. 53358 John Wise Line is a large, currently parcel zoned A1, which contains a single detached dwelling. It does not currently have legal road frontage on an open road allowance. And so the owners are proposing a land swap to convey land to each other in order to ensure that the property does have access to John Wise Line, and that access is no longer provided over top of another property. These lands are designated as agricultural, and the PPS county and local official plans do permit minor boundary adjustments for legal or technical reasons. In this case, ensuring that both properties have adequate frontage on an open public road, as well as creating a more regular lot line between the two parcels. Currently, it's quite irregular and jagged, so this would create a more cleaner division between the two properties. The lands are also designated as a natural heritage feature, which covers the majority of both parcels. The provincial policy statement doesn't permit development and site alteration within or adjacent to natural heritage features. However, PPS defines development as the creation of a new lot, and so in this case, with no new lot being created, it would be consistent with those policies. Both lots are zoned general agricultural A1 and are currently existing undersized lots, and so a zoning bylaw amendment will be required as a condition to permit the changes in the lot areas, as well as permit a reduced lot frontage for one of the properties. And so in conclusion, staff are recommending that both applications be supported, subject to the recommended conditions being forwarded to Land Division Committee. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take questions from members of council.
Thank you for this overview. Questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll proceed with a motion, please.
The report number DS 2430 entitled Application for Consent to Sever number D10 E42/E43-24 of Maitland Williams and Aiden Wilkins be received, and that the application for consent to sever number D10 E42/43-24 of Maitland Williams and Aiden Wilkins relating to the properties located at Concession 5 South Part Lot 35, RP 11R 3317 Part 1, and Concession 5 South Part Lot 35, Township of Malahide, 53358 and 53408 John Wise Line be supported for the reasons set out in this report, and that this report and the recommended conditions be forwarded to the Land Division Committee for its review and consideration.
Thank you. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Whitner moves. Councillor Cerna seconds. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Steele. I think those are all your reports this evening. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you. So we'll move now to our CAOs and department, Office of the CEO, to discuss the customer service related policies. And I think Sue, our HR manager, will be taking us over or taking us for the overview of those policies that are being proposed this evening.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm happy to be here this evening to speak to the next item on our agenda. These policies are being brought forward this evening for information, and it's just for us to gather some feedback from Council as well. It was identified early on following the strategic plan's vision, mission, and values that a comprehensive customer service policy was necessary to ensure that priorities within the strategic plan could be achieved. So in collaboration with CAO Diaz, Clerk Adams, Community Service and Economic Development Manager Stephen Tripp, we have prepared for review the three corporate policies to address customer service. The first policy listed is the customer service policy. And what it does is we strive to be an organization that is customer focused and to deliver services to the community. It sets customer service standards, what customers can expect, what employees are expected to demonstrate and to display. It provides information on contact channels, response timeframes, describes the escalation process, how to handle complaints and compliments. We felt that it was necessary to include that component because we do want to celebrate, you know, when our employees are demonstrating customer service excellence wherever possible. The next corporate policy is the complaint and service request handling policy. So this will just provide a consistent approach to dealing with complaints and service requests that we are receiving. It provides some definitions as well as the process and staff responsibility. The third corporate policy, it's called the frivolous, vexatious, or unreasonable complaints and requests. And what this policy will allow us to do is provide a mechanism for staff to address situations where complaints can consume an excessive amount of time and resources, hindering the township from effectively serving our community. It's important to note that when we are going to be applying this policy, it's going to be used as a last resort, you know, after all attempts have been utilized to try to resolve the complaints in the situation. Every case is going to be considered in light of its own circumstance. However, you will see that the policy does outline some examples for you. And lastly, by implementing this policy, it ensures that the employer and council is being supportive of the Ontario Health and Safety Act for the protection of its employees so that we are complying with that particular act. The last policy you will see is just a revision from our current customer service policy, which is in our human resources manual. And the revisions here are just to address some of the components that are contained within the corporate policies. That kind of concludes my overview, so I'll just pass that back to you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lots of work to review and establish those. So I'll open it up, and as the manager mentioned this evening, it's really just for feedback, for discussion. We're not making final decisions. And so the idea is to take that feedback and provide another version. So that means it opens it up for the public also. It involves everybody. It involves our, you know, our constituents, our customers. It involves council, it involves employees. So like I said, I'll open it up for discussion for this evening and feedback. Councillor Wilson.
Through you, Madam Mayor. This is great that this is being laid out. Common sense is uncommon nowadays. And just because some people know how to act doesn't mean that everyone knows how to act appropriately. So this is excellent to lay it out and go, hey, don't treat people like that. You won't get treated badly yourself if you treat people nicely. The old golden rule. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Further comments and feedback? I'm seeing none. As Sue mentioned, it is one of the priorities we discussed, that often it's hard to respond, whether it's from a staff or council or constituents. It's hard to establish what, if this is right or not right, if it's common sense, if that line has not been drawn and communicated. So I think this does a good job. One of the priorities is to establish, document, and then implement service levels. But so this is the first part. We've got to establish what that service level is, and then we'll know if we're missing the mark or not. So good job on getting that ball rolling. It feels like you're documenting common sense, but that's the only way you can actually enforce the rules, is to have them written down. Councillor Cerna.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I found, and I keep repeating myself year after year, but I found that going over this, that in all my experience, you are only as good as the people you have working for you. And I like what Sue said, that if you do a good job, you should be told you do a good job. Because if you're doing a crappy job, God help you, because everybody tells you that. And they do. And everybody's on your ass. So, and I don't blame you for that. And you deserve it if you do something bad. But if you do something good, you got to make sure you tell them you're doing a good job. And I don't know if we do that enough, and we should be. And I do it Well, when the opportunity comes. I don't know if I told you that, Jason, lately, but 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 you have to do it all the time, because if you go one way, you've got to make sure you go the other. And I think that that's very important that we do that. Okay, thank you very much. And Jason, you're doing a good job, and I believe everybody is. And I think when I go to the office, I make sure I tell everybody that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out, because it is about not only enforcing when we're off, as in not meeting the line, but also when we do meet it or exceed it, then that's a way, this provides a mechanism for actually knowing and recognizing that. So thank you for mentioning that. Great. Well, it sounds like we'll look forward to revised draft. I know, I think I had sent some notes. I know in my experience, the clarity is what will bring, additional ease of implementation. So I had a few comments about just making the language very consistent from one policy to another, and so in the steps, making sure the steps are really clear. So yeah, so we'll look forward to the next version. So thank you for getting that started. So can I have the motion, please?
The report number HR 2405 entitled Customer Service Related Policies be received for information, and that the policies attached to this report be brought forward for approval at an upcoming council meeting.
Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Leach moves. Councillor Surna seconds. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Ms. Lowen. Next, we go to reports of committees and outside boards to be noted in file. What do we have this week? We have the minutes from the Aylmer Area Secondary Water Supply System. We have the Long Point Region Conservation Authority minutes, the Catfish Creek Conservation Authority. That's their draft watershed-based resource management strategy. So that document is open for comments now, and it's open for the public to comment as well. I think we can go on their website and review this strategy. So I invite everybody to review that and provide their comments or questions if you have any. Any other comments or questions from those reports received from outside boards and agencies? Councillor Leach?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I just noticed in reading the Catfish Creek Conservation Authority, some of their maps are fairly long dated. I was wondering if there was any newer maps that could be provided, because obviously over time things change.
That's a good question. I'm going to look at Councillor Lewis. I don't know if you want to take those back, or if you prefer that those questions be sent as part of the, like, more formally as part of the consultation process. Do you have a preference? You take them back? Okay. And yeah, and actually that reminds me, one of the questions I had, I believe the flood mapping has been updated. There are a couple of links in the document right now that are not working. So when they say, look at this document, but you can't actually look at the document. And another question I received was whether the flood mapping, the updated ones, would be available to the public, and are they available now? So, because I think that project has been completed. And so if you're able to report on that and at a future meeting to see if because I think it's something that is of interest of residents, businesses. So it's not just the Conservation Authority. That would be useful. Thank you. If there are no further comments, or is there a question? No, or for after the meeting? We'll entertain the motion, please.
That the following reports of committees and outside boards be noted and filed: the joint minutes of the Aylmer Area Secondary Water Supply System and Port Burwell Area Secondary Water Supply System draft minutes of June 12th, Long Point Region Conservation Authority minutes of May 1st, and the Catfish Creek Conservation Authority draft watershed-based resource management strategy consultation period.
Mover and seconder, please. Counselor Cerna moves, Counselor Lewis seconds, all in favor? That is carried. Next is correspondence. There are 7 items. Anyone wish to comment? Counselor Leach?
In the Elgin County brief, I know that the resident who suggested moving the signage in Kings Mill Corners is quite pleased. So thank you to Elgin County.
Thank you for letting us know. Counselor Wilson?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's not in this week's correspondence, but it was in recent correspondence, and we got confirmation from the Ontario Groundwater Association that the public health units, they will continue testing of well water across Ontario. It's not going away. Confirmed. Thank you.
Yes, that was a relief. Good news. Counselor Lewis?
Through you, Madam Mayor, just number 5, the letter from the Elmer Cemetery Board. Being I was on the grant funding committee, it was nice to see a little recognition after they got what they asked for. So a little recognition, like Sue said, goes a long, long way when you get a little pat in the back, and Rick said.
And speaking of recognition, I want to acknowledge item number 3. So the township and really staff have received an award with BAM for the shared services model that we have been piloting. So I think this is a great example of, innovation, ideas, a solution-oriented approach, and of partnering and collaborating with neighboring municipalities. So it's still a work in progress, but I think other municipalities would probably be surprised that it is possible, and we're demonstrating that it is possible. And with a bit of, like I said, creativity and open-mindedness, then we can solve HR issues. So congratulations on to all involved. Any further comments? Seeing none, we have the motion, please.
That the following 7 correspondence items be noted and filed.
Mover and seconder. Counselor Lewis moves. Counselor Cerna seconds. All in favor? That is carried. Next on the agenda is other business. Any new business or other business? Deputy Mayor Widner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to highlight the Springfield Fun Day was a really good success. People, the kids and the families were lined up for about an hour to get their balloons and the face paintings and everything. So I had challenged the mayor to get her face painted, but she just wouldn't do it. But anyway, it was a successful day. It was a beautiful day, and kids really enjoyed it. So congratulations to everybody involved. Thank you.
Did the deputy mayor get his face painted?
They won't be ringing.
Oh, I see. I'll take it as a compliment then. Any other business? All right, moving on to bylaws. So this week we're looking at the bylaws from reports we have looked at before in terms of the lot standards and the property standards. And there's also the procedural bylaw. So I'll just stop for the lot standards and property standards. Any further comments or questions before we look at endorsing those bylaws? Seeing none. And so regarding the procedural bylaw, I'll turn it over to CEO Diaz if you wanted to provide a few highlights. As you recall, this is following a workshop that we had to explore and learn about all the different options and all of the different ways that the meeting can be structured and our procedures can be structured to maximize access and everyone's involvement. So this is the result that you're seeing today. And if you can walk us through some of the highlights of the changes, that would be great.
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'll just do a brief walkthrough through the procedural bylaw. So if everyone could go to page 177. As you begin from page 177, is everyone there? Okay. We begin with the table of contents. The layout of the procedural bylaw here, we looked at a number of procedural bylaws nearby. We built it off a backbone from a combination of our own procedural bylaw in the past and also with Central Elgin. And part of the strategy here was to make sure that everything is documented very clearly in order to serve as a good reference and make it as organized and comprehensible as possible in order to explain various components of procedure. Again, it's one of those elements where procedure can be well maintained if everyone can find the correct element of procedure when it's called upon. So beyond the table of contents, we'll continue down to page 178. Over here, we have the definitions in the procedural bylaw. The definitions, instead of being categorized alphabetically, we've broken it down into sections based on their functional category. So we begin with the general terms and legislation, and this explains the various legislation that is brought up in the procedural bylaw. Moving on from that, the next definition will go over council positions and titles. So this explains the various definitions of, again, council positions and titles. The next step is staff positions and titles, is section 2.12. And thereafter, meeting positions and titles. So it's one of those elements where, for instance, the mayor is also the chair, but the chair may not necessarily be the mayor. So again, explaining all these various different components. We go on to then explain definitions for meetings, committees, and local boards, and explaining the differences of all of these committees. Then we go on to define recommendations and decision-making mechanisms. So from the various differences of recommendations, motions, direction, resolution, and bylaw. And thereafter, we have all other meeting definitions, everything that was left over. Moving ahead into the general provision section. This is again applying the scope of the procedural bylaw. So this procedural bylaw is required by the Municipal Act. As per the Municipal Act, a specific bylaw needs to be passed to go over the proceedings of council and of its committees. So this is applicable to all committees of council as well. I think the key element is if a committee is not utilizing this, it would have to have its own procedural bylaw. Otherwise, it would default onto this procedural bylaw. That's why you'll see the reference for committee or chair throughout this procedural bylaw as well. Moving on to section 3.5 there, this explains live streaming. Section 4 goes over the duties of various positions. So section 4.1 is the duty of the mayor. Then we move on to the duties of the deputy mayor, the duties of members of council, the duties of committee chairs, the duties of a committee vice chair, the participation of the committee chair in debate, and the duties of committee members. So all the various definitions of who does what is all explained there. Section 5 goes over meetings and the different types of meetings. So again, it helps differentiate what's the difference between regular, special, and closed meetings, as well as emergency meetings. And if we keep scrolling, because there's a lot of detail here, you'll see electronic participation and how that can be undertaken when that needs to be undertaken. Section 6 goes over agendas and minutes and basically provides a general provision over the layout of the agenda. A key component that you will see in this section is the committee of the whole. And this is going to be a key difference moving forward. where the committee of the whole section has the specific reference to business for consideration. So in terms of the decision-making process, reports, for instance, will be brought forward under the committee of the whole, where it will be listed as business for consideration because it's being brought forward to council to take a look at. Anything that isn't dealt with within is brought forward again in the next meeting thereafter will be moved into just the regular part of council where it's there under section 6.1 subsection 1H, which is approval of business, which is similar to how you approve your bylaws right now with but in this case a consent agenda. That being said, if you get feedback from the public on a specific item, or while council is considering a specific item from a committee of the whole session from the week prior, you may wish to pull something out of that consent agenda, and that's where it will be discussed under new business. You'll also notice that other business isn't referred to specifically, but other business has evolved into the sections known as new business, and also the section for announcements. So again, a different type of format when it comes to decision making, but a format that allows more opportunity for public input and also more of an opportunity for council consideration on business. One important matter to discuss, as it was brought forward, is the urgency for planning considerations. So to keep in mind, any sort of planning reports will actually be brought forward for under the approval of business section and sorry, under the new business section under the regular part of council, so not in the committee of the whole. Moving thereafter from section 6, section 7 actually goes into the detail of all these various components and explains how every one of those elements works. Thereafter, section 8 goes over delegations. This section has consolidated delegations, presentations, deputations into just one header, and it has all the rules of how that would work. Section 9 goes under, outlines the rules of debate and conduct. Section 10 is motions. And all the various motions, there's a lot more than what we typically use. And then notice on motions, voting on motions thereafter. And section 14 goes under the conduct of the audience. And finally, section 15 is just administration. This was a bit of a walkthrough through the procedural bylaw. Is there any questions?
Deputy Mayor Whitner.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just looking at the announcement and new business thing. The announcements, say you have a problem, you want to bring it forward council, so council can understand, maybe you heard something today. I don't see a spot to put that. That's really not under announcements or new business, correct? If I look at the definitions.
Oh, for the definitions. And sorry, I'm just not quite understanding the.
There's a concern from a constituent.
Oh, okay.
That you've heard, then typically now we put it under other business.
Right. So in terms of a concern from a constituent, it would typically now fall under new business under the committee of the whole. So most likely it would be, in terms of any concern, it would likely be based on an inquiry for clarification on a certain process or information on how something works, whether it's a program or service that we have. So that could certainly be outlined under the committee of the whole section for new business. The way it would work is it would be brought forward under the, when we're discussing the approval of the agenda, members would at that point bring forward anything that would be in addition to the agenda. And thereafter, the chair and the clerk would ensure that it would be categorized under its appropriate section. So whether it would be announcements, whether it would be new business under the committee of the whole, or whether it would be new business in just the business for approval section, the agenda.
Any other questions? I said, I wanted to highlight, so that's the main change. And sometimes the question is, so if we change something, usually it's because we're trying to improve something. And so I think the spirit here is trying to provide a combination of timeliness. So for planning decisions, we're not going to, think about it and discuss things, and they will remain in that sort of decision-making section, that first section of the meeting. But other reports, other new policies, like this evening, I think is a perfect example. We're looking at new or revised policies for customer service. So this is a place where you put it in the committee of the whole. We're not trying to make a decision this evening. So the committee of the whole structure, and even for the chair, is a little bit more loose. It's more discussion, a little bit more back and forth. And like I said, you're not trying to make a decision that same night. So that means there's a full 2 weeks for the public, for staff, for all of us to sort of do the sober second thoughts and come up with perhaps new questions after you've had the discussion. And this is the part where we've often heard, and I've experienced, like in the current model, we're often in a position where our agenda comes out on a Tuesday, and we're in a position to make a decision on Thursday. So that's 48 hours. So that's not great for the public. And we've heard that from the public as well. And then that's when they say, well, I can't request a delegation. I haven't seen even the meeting agenda. This goes from 48 hours to 2 weeks. And we've heard it from staff also, where as counselors, if we have questions, by the time we read it, maybe it's Wednesday, and by the time we send the question to staff, then it's Thursday, and it's the same day of the meeting. So to me, it didn't seem to convey, and I remember we discussed this. I know it goes back in March when we had our training session on this, that it doesn't seem to send a signal that first we want public feedback, or that maybe it could send a signal that staff doesn't really want questions from council, like, because it's like, yes, let's move this quickly, when in fact, I don't think that's the case. So now we have a mechanism that really conveys truly what we're trying to do, is to work as one team and give everybody a chance to think about things, like I said, when they're not really time sensitive. And so do research, ask questions, talk to your constituents, and then come to a decision, the 2 weeks. And if that means, we said, if we're not quite ready even that evening, we have the choice to send it back for further input and maybe invite delegation. And I think the other significant change is the start time. I don't think you mentioned that. So that's a departure from a tradition. So we did agree to start the meetings at 7. And I think that also speaks to our accessibility and engagement with everyone. If we start earlier, we'll also finish earlier. And so that increases access to the meetings. Deputy Mayor Widner?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just have an inquiry. Say purchases, like I know Jeff wanted to buy a new fire truck 2 weeks ago. Well, let's say some members of the public don't think it's a good idea. So he's time sensitive. He's got to order it within a month. It would come back in 2 weeks. If there's a problem, it'd be another 2 weeks. It could be another 4 weeks. So how does that work? Is there a dispute mechanism, or what are we going to do there?
So there will always be this flexibility in terms of if something needs to be expedited. If you go back to section 7 there for the agenda, it will have an opportunity to put it into the actual council meetings section for new business. So if there is any time a circumstance where we need an expedited decision required for something, it'll go under new business for in the decision-making capacity under the council meeting section.
Yeah, and maybe one way to look at it is that if it's for example, the fire truck we looked at was already approved under the budget. So it's not something that would have had an impact on our constituents, or so it's not something that needs to go in committee of the whole, and then we think about it for 2 weeks, and then we collect some feedback. That we would have done at the time when we discussed the budget in the committee of the whole, where we're going back and forth and we're receiving feedback. So I think an item like that, to your point, Deputy Mayor, that it is time sensitive. You don't want to delay. You want to make sure procurement. So this is not intended to delay business at all, because if the reports that are coming in are within the budget and the budget is already approved, we're not going to think about it and consult and get feedback. Those items would go immediately into the council meeting portion. We would reserve the committee of the whole just for reports where there is time and where there's an impact on our constituents, or even on, the way we conduct our business, and the things that have not necessarily been approved in the budget or pre-approved in other ways. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you. The ability for the public to maybe say, we don't want to get this fire truck, but I could save you $100,000 if we did it cheaper. I don't care if it's in the budget or not. If somebody has a great idea, maybe we should listen to it, but just put that out there. And I guess I was talking
So if I may, just to clarify that point right away. So the agenda is still going to be published on the Tuesday.
I understand.
And so there's still that 48 hours. So that's not going away. So if there is objection, and if our constituents want to comment on something that's being proposed, even though within the budget, so that window is not going away for sure. So we can encourage everybody to keep an eye on the agenda anyway, and to send their feedback. Sorry, I interrupted.
Okay. Also, I was talking to Nathan today, the ability to change anything we don't like in this can be brought up if we have enough members of council to want to make a change to these. Say something doesn't work. This is all new. Maybe it won't work. Maybe there's some sections that won't. So just because Central Log and other ones do it doesn't maybe mean it's formaldehyde, but I guess we're going to give it a shot. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Like I said, this was based on the workshop that we had in March, and I think I recall that workshop. We said let's try, and if we can tweak this, nothing's going to be carved in stone. We can change the procedure anytime. It is the power of council. It is our policy. Mr. Diaz, did you have any further comments?
No.
Okay, good. Councilor Glinski.
Just because we passed it in the budget and there appears to be a good price from Central Algon or whatever, we aren't tendering anymore. We're just going ahead. Is this correct or incorrect?
I think that's incorrect, but I can, Mr. Gobby, did you want to comment? We're not skipping any processes. I mean, the budget is the guideline. Mr. Gobby?
Yeah, if I gather correctly here, I think it's fair to say that we're going to continue on most of those processes normally. If we do, like in the case of the fire truck, that was we joined a joint procurement. Council will see those kind of things come forward, perhaps for some of our fleet equipment, where we that open procurement has happened somewhere else, so we're piggybacking. Though that's what happens in those cases, and all we're doing at that point is bringing it to council to say, hey, we got this great deal on a fire truck or on a snowplow or whatever. By jumping on to a procurement that went on with someone else, would you allow us to do so? So we're not proceeding just because we had a budget approval. That always still needs to come back, just due to our procurement bylaw and the dollar value thresholds that we do have to bring things back to council for.
Okay, and so, yeah, so we'll be open for feedback. It'll be a work in progress as we all adjust to even the starting time. I think so if we pass this evening, that would be at our next, our next meeting, we'll start at 7. So I'm just saying.
It's our
So-
next meeting.
So Councillor Wilson, we'll see if the vote passes, then yes, the next meeting will start at 7. We'll send you a reminder just before. Okay, so let's, yeah, that's right.
Sun's down at 5, I can be here.
That's right. Well, let's entertain the motion first and see how it goes. Good question. The clerk is asking, do you wish to pass the resolution separately? So we have 3 bylaws this evening. So would you like one resolution to pass the lot standards and property standards as one, and one to pass the procedural bylaw separate, or just together?
That the following bylaws be considered read at first, second, and third reading and properly signed and sealed. Bylaw 2424, lot standards, bylaw 2425, property standards, and bylaw 2435, procedural bylaw.
Mover and seconder. Councillor Lewis moves, Councillor Cerna seconds, all in favor? That is carried. So Councillor Wilson, the next meeting is at 7. So next on the agenda is a closed meeting. So may I have a motion to allow us to move in closed session, please?
The council move into closed session at 8:32 p.m. pursuant to section 239-2 of the Municipal Act as amended to discuss the following: a personnel matter about an identifiable individual, including municipal and local board employees, section 239-2C.
Thank you. Mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Widner moves. Councillor Cerna seconds. All in favor? That is carried. We'll recess for 5 minutes and then resume into closed session. We're now back from a closed session. May I have the motion, please?
That staff were given direction in closed session on a personnel matter about an identifiable individual, including municipal and local board employees.
Mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor Widner moves. Councillor Wilson seconds. All in favor? That is carried. We'll proceed with confirmatory bylaw.
The bylaw number 2434, being a confirmatory bylaw, be given first, second, and third reading and properly signed and sealed.
Mover and seconder. Councillor Cerna moves. Councillor Lewis seconds. All in favor? That's carried. And adjournment.
The council adjourned its meeting at 9:01 p.m. to meet again on July 4th, 2024 at 7 p.m.
Very nice. Deputy Mayor Widner moves. Councillor Cerna seconds. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening and see you in 2 weeks at 7.